just want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kylie Jackson, and I'll be the facilitator for today's session. Alongside Miss Angelica Devon, she's going to be my co-facilitator today, should anything happen to my wonderful internet. I am the president of Student National Education Association, also known as SNEA. Before we get too deep, I just want to go over some simple housekeeping rules. First and foremost, please make sure that your microphones are muted throughout today's presentation, unless otherwise instructed by our presenters. Please make sure that you field any comments, questions, concerns to the chat box. There will definitely be a time towards the end dedicated to answering any of those questions, and I will definitely interlude if it's necessary. So today's presenters are Ms. Gina Marziato, Jenna Turner, and Evie Johnson from Seminole County Public Schools. So without further ado, the School of Teacher Education and Student National Education Association presents Teacher Panel Q&A. So first we're going to start it off with if you ladies would like to introduce yourselves, tell us how long you've been teaching, and what grade level you teach right now.
Okay, I'll go. Hi, this is Gina Marziato. I teach at Walker Elementary. I have taught, this is my 4th year teaching. My first year I taught 4th grade, and for the past 3 years I've been in 2nd grade.
I'll go next. My name is Evie Johnson. I have been teaching, this is my 2nd year. I am at Altamont Elementary.
My name is Jenna Turner. I teach at Goldsboro Elementary School in Sanford. This is my 4th year teaching. My first year I taught 3rd grade, and the past 3 years I have taught 2nd.
Thank you very much. So our first question is a little bit of a lengthy one, so I'm going to send it in the chat in case you guys are like me and are visual kind of people. But I will read it. What are your required reading assessments for your classroom? When are these administered? Do you use an informal reading inventory? If so, what is it? And what accommodations do you make for your ELLs?
I'll go. So the beginning of the year, middle year, and end of the year, we always do placement tests to kind of see where they are. So we start with a sight words test, and actually that one, since last year, we've been doing quarterly. We start typically at the grade level that we're in, so 2nd grade, and if they struggle, we go down to 1st. So sight words is one, that's 4 times a year. Phonics screeners at the minimum 3 times a year, beginning, middle, end. And then a fluency test, how many words they can read in 1 minute and how fluently they read. And then we also do DRAs, with the exception of right now, my school, for instance, for Connect, which is what I'm doing, we're not doing DRAs over the computer. But typically that's also beginning, middle, and end of the year. They obviously do their iReady diagnostics 3 times a year as well. And I'd say as like the really formal assessments, we do cold reads or comprehension tests every 2 weeks.
We're pretty much the same here at Walker, but actually we don't, in 2nd grade, like you said, the iReady assessment, and I think that based on the iReady assessment, so if they're really low in their phonics or phonological awareness, then we kind of, it's not required, but we definitely keep track of that, because by 2nd grade, you know, they should have those skills down pat. We also do fluencies. If they reach the benchmark for the first one, we don't take another one until the middle of the year. If they don't reach the benchmark, we do one every other week. So we're definitely tracking that data. Same thing with cold reads. We do quarterly assessments. And then same thing with DRA. We haven't started it yet, but that's definitely like, you get like a bigger picture of their comprehension and their fluency. And that's that diagnostic reading assessment. So pretty much the same.
Over at Altamont, it is pretty much the same. Also, I teach first grade. I don't know if I said that at the beginning, but I teach first grade. So we do the DRAs. I know this year for first grade, we're doing them 4 times. Last year, we did them 3 times. Those will start in October, and then we'll do our last ones at the end of April. We also do iReady. We also have 4 of those diagnostics, which then kind of break it down with phonological awareness and all that good stuff. We also have a phonics program at Altamont. It's called Fast Track Phonics. So with that, we actually in first grade take 9 assessments, and it builds off their kindergarten sounds. And then by the end of first grade, they will have all, I think it is 52 sounds in total that they should know. So that's another way that we benchmark throughout the year.
So our second question was, do you use any additional types of assessment, which I feel like most of you kind of touched upon on the first one. So we'll go ahead and go on to our third question. How much time is spent each day on reading instruction, and how does this time break down in your own words?
For us, it used to be a 90-minute block the past few years. This year they increased it just because we got rid of STEM. We've kind of fixed our schedule, but it's a 110-minute reading block. So it equates to kind of a 60-minute whole group, which tends to be a little bit long, and then 2 20-minute small group meetings a day. So I meet with 2 small groups per day after the whole group lesson. And while I'm meeting with the small groups, they will work, the other 2 groups will work on an independent skill or iReady or whatever else they need to work on within reading that week. And then we also have reading intervention every day but Wednesday, and that's 35 minutes per day. And the plan is to meet with each of the 4 groups once a week for that time. So they're getting up to 145 minutes of reading per day.
Our reading block here is a total of 100 minutes, so it's an hour and 40 minutes. And it really, whole group, I mean, it can switch up depending on the skill. Like some days whole group goes really long. Other days, if you're just reviewing, whole group can be a lot quicker, and then they move into their centers. We also spend a little bit of time on phonics and grammar. Sometimes we start off with that, and then they can finish those activities in their centers. So I think it's broken down for us with phonics and grammar, whole group instruction, and then their centers. I try to do at least like 1 center a day, because sometimes if I am short on time and trying to get everybody is difficult. So I see everybody at least once a week in my small group. And then when they're in their centers, they're doing, their work with their small group for the rest of the time.
Yeah, our ELA block is about 90 minutes as well, but we first start off our day with our phonics. So that's about 45 minutes. I extend it to about 45 minutes, anywhere in between. It just kind of depends, especially at the beginning of the year, because kindergarten, they may remember, they may not. So we do phonics, and then we go straight into our ELA block. A lot of that is, reading stories throughout the week, whether it's whole group or they read it small group again. And then we've got, worksheets to go with that, and just things that they can build on. We also do have a guided reading block as well. Well, that's what I call it, which is a great time for them to do centers, again, touching on a lot of those, but then also it gives me time to at least do 1 or 2 guided reading groups a day, which is great. So then I can read with all the kids and really see where they're at.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Our 4th question today is, what reading programs or materials do you use with your students, including ELLs?
I'll go first on this one, since you ladies have gone first on the other ones. So I know for our guided reading block, we actually have a resource room within our school. The books that we use are the Sunshine books, and typically it's enough for a small group for each kid to have a copy. I know that one does have certain books are for ELLs as well. But I also have a handful of materials that were given to me last year for ELL guided reading blocks. But typically, I know at my school, my ELL students actually get pulled out during my guided reading block, and they do something very similar with the ESOL teacher. So.
That's what the ELLs at my school do as well. They usually get pulled out for a small group during our reading time. So they are doing something aligned with whatever standard we're working on. So we're always in communication with the ESOL teacher. I'd say specifically, I guess some of the materials would be like the reading street book, because that's what the framework references some of the time. Sometimes we'll supplement with other just chosen read alouds that align with the standard we're working on. Leveled readers, reading A to Z. We use a lot of those in small group, and those are just a few that come to mind.
Yeah, pretty much bouncing back. Walker has those same reading programs. Reading Street we use a lot in all centers. The kids are either buddy reading or independently reading or reading with teacher. We also have a resource room. The reading resource room will be like your best friend. It has like everything, all grade levels. So if you're with a kindergarten group, you can go get a packet of kindergarten books to do guided reading. So it's awesome. That room is amazing. And so we also, I mean, I don't know if it's considered, I mean, I think like iReady also offers resources. Like the teacher toolbox has been super helpful. You can also go by grade level on that. So even though I teach second grade, I still have to pull like different grade level items from that. So that's also a really good resource.
Well, that was like a lot of tips. So thank you guys. I appreciate that. So our next question, I know you guys touched on it a little bit, but I don't know if you have any more additional. What other print or digital reading materials do students have access to for additional practice?
I think, is this just kind of like extra resources that they can use? Okay. I know a really good reading one is like ReadWorks. It's a website it's free. You can sign up and you can type in their Lexile levels, nonfiction, fiction, and they can practice comprehension with that. That's really good resource to use. Also, like anything in the frameworks. I mean, it's not that it's required to use all of it, but you can kind of browse through and see what you think will be effective for your classroom and use those materials. Those are just some things.
Yeah, ReadWorks is super good. I give that to my kids every year, and that's like something they can practice for homework. So you just kind of assign a class, and you can assign them assignments to practice comprehension skills. So that's super helpful. And then like some of my kids really like Epic, website Epic. You can read the stories there, or they can read them to them. And then I think there's even like little quizzes and stuff afterwards. Tumble Books is another one that they like, and they actually, at least through Seminole County, they have access to Tumble Books through their Clever, through their portal. So they already have an account with that one. I'm trying to think of another one. World Book Online is another one through their portal that we use sometimes for research, especially when we're doing like informational texts.
Awesome. So I know that you, I think Gina, I think you mentioned a resource room, but our next question, is there a school-wide resource room or collection with level texts? And if so, do teachers use this collection? And if not, where do you get your leveled materials from?
Yeah, it's amazing. But we also have like a book room. So there's like a resource room, but there's also a book room, which is more so for, I guess, like teacher edition things, but they also have leveled readers. So that's definitely where we get a lot of that from. It's awesome.
At my school too, we have a resource room. As a first year teacher last year, the reading coach actually showed it to me, and I lived in there. This year, I've made it my goal not to live in there as much, but they always have wonderful, wonderful things. A lot of the teachers that I actually talked to last year didn't know about the room, but they had there before, I was like, hello, you need to come in here. So I would definitely say, like, no matter where you're at, your school should have something. It's awesome. Just don't get too lost, but it's awesome.
We have one as well, and it's a great resource. Definitely utilize it as much as you can. Like the girls have mentioned, they have every level, no matter if you teach what grade level, you can kind of pull from what level you're needing. The thing that I probably use it for the most, besides just individual like lower readers for kids, because typically what you're teaching, like your framework is going to be on grade level. So you're going to need the lower and you're going to need the upper. So I use it for the lower and the upper, especially for like book studies I like to do in small group and in intervention with my enrichment kids, do a book study. And usually like our school has a class set of chapter books by grade level. So you can kind of pick and choose and do a novel study through that.
Yeah, I just want to, that's a really good idea for like a whole class book study. They have like sets of whole entire class sets, which is really cool. Also, it's not only, I mean, I don't know, just maybe our school, but it's not just books, but sometimes there's like games with like phonics or like activities, like hands-on, not as many as the book sets, but there are sometimes a few in there too that would help also.
One last thing, just throwing it out there. The reading resource rooms will save you a ton of money. I know as a first year teacher last year, I was very panicked because I was like, I don't know where to find all this stuff. And the reading coach was like, whoa, come here, let me show you this. So yeah, it definitely saves a lot of money, especially with the book sets. I had a very, very high class last year, so I was very fortunate enough to do book studies with them and everything like that. And that room made it 10 times easier. So
Okay, so our next one, how do you differentiate instruction to meet the needs of all students? And if any of you guys are teaching virtually at any point, if you could give some insight into how you meet their needs virtually as well, would be wonderful.
Well, I'm doing Connect, so I'm doing the virtual aspect right now, and a lot of my class is very high, so I'm trying to figure out ways, because normally we teach them, especially with comprehension, the strategies they need to comprehend a text, and a lot of that is kind of hands-on when they have a printout of it, underlining and highlighting and going back and finding your evidence, and it's hard to do that digitally. So that's a struggle at the moment, but what I have been doing a lot of is like sharing my screen and giving them texts that are on their level and doing it together. And the hope is to assign it to them through their Google Classroom for them to do it as well. But I am doing book studies with 3 out of the 4 of my groups starting in a week or so for enrichment. And then phonics and lower comprehension for my other students.
For me, it does have a lot to do with their guided reading time. Just because I say guided reading doesn't necessarily mean that every group is reading, because some are so low on phonological awareness or vocabulary, or, whatever they're low in, that's what I tend to go towards a little bit more. The reading resource room, again, a lot of different levels. So I pull a lot of different texts from that. ELLs, like I said, I do have some bilingual materials, so that's helpful, but most of the time they get pulled out by the ESOL specialist at that time.
Yeah, just to bounce back off of those, I think really it's taking a look, like once they get their iReady diagnostic done, it's a lot easier to look at, just because they're all in second grade doesn't mean that they have their K and 1 skills down pat. So kind of grouping them that way, their phonics group, maybe they need vocabulary, things like that. So just taking the time to look at that snapshot of what skills they need practice on and go from there.
And I know, Evie, you mentioned this a little bit, but what accommodations do you guys make for your ELLs? And if you don't currently have any ELLs, what would you do for them other than what the work that they get with their teacher that they get pulled out with?
So I know like at my school, the ESOL teacher gives us all a binder for each kid, pretty much of like, you know, what we should do within the classroom. Last year I had more than I had this year, but regardless of the fact, I know, especially because I am in first grade, a lot of them, you know, a school is still kind of new to them. So I actually label the entire room. You know, this is a door handle, this is a door. You would be amazed. This is, you know, your cubbies, this is a cabinet, the sink, just little things like that. It helps them. I know that the signs that I have are bilingual in Spanish. I don't have any other languages just because that's the only language I really had last year and this year. So, and visuals, another thing when I teach, a lot of pictures that was given to me last year from the ESOL specialist. So I have a lot of pictures around my room, especially instructional too. Always trying to find, you know, if we're reading a story, maybe we cut out the picture and they have that on their desk so they know that this character, you know, that's what they look like. It's easier for them sometimes.
That sounds great that your ELL person makes you guys a binder. That's something I wish we had. Um, I've never really had a situation where I've had an ELL student that needed heavy accommodations or anything. I guess bouncing off of the visuals or just finding other context clues to help them with things they may not understand is something I would do, or like a dictionary that has like their own personal dictionary they can even add to with pictures and things like that.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is like visuals when I think of accommodations for that. Also like sentence frames, using sentence frames for them, because I mean, really for anybody too, not just ELLs, it's hard sometimes for them to form a sentence starter. So yeah, visual sentence frames. Also like a lot of group work. I mean, I know right now group work is hard, but them learning from their peers is also something I've noticed with ELLs that is beneficial to them and it's effective. And also like just kind of pre-teaching. I mean, we already pre-teach usually, but whenever you can, because you never know what they have no idea what you're talking about. If you're talking about the beach and they can't, like, you know, anytime you can to just like pre-teach, show them the visuals of that to help guide them.
I just want to add into like in the very literal sense as far as accommodations, ESOL students usually get extra time on their assignments, 50% extra time to complete assignments. And typically if they're within a certain amount of years of their program, they are not allowed to get lower than a 70% on a graded assignment within our county.
That was a lot of really good insight. Thank you. So bouncing off that a little bit, I know this is a really big question for a lot of us, but how much time does it take to assess and plan for all of the reading needs in your classroom? And how much time do you spend on average planning for a week of reading instruction?
I thought this question was so funny because I'm like, time. Oh, it's such a valuable thing right now. Planning. So are you saying like if we give an assessment in class, how long does it take? Or are we just talking like planning as a team, or kind of all of it together?
I would say honestly
Okay.
all of it if you're
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, so whenever there are assessments coming up, we put them into the lesson plans. And I mean, assessments, really, you're given that one block to take the assessment, unless they receive accommodations, which could be like time and a half. So as far as basic assessments, those are just given on one day, one block. But things like DRAs, like I know sometimes that could take, because it does take a long time to do a DRA for one student. So we could say, you know, a whole week you're doing it for the whole class. I mean, it's only one person unless you have someone in to help you. It does take, you know, quite some time to do a DRA. And I mean, I think like we PLC with our team every week, every day, every night. And we're constantly strategizing things of what to do and constantly coming up with things. So I think really in reality, you are always planning. There's never a time where you're not. I mean, speaking for myself and my team, it's like all the time, and especially right now. But we try to just look at the week ahead or a couple of weeks ahead and just plan from there and look at the assessments, and that's where we go from.
Going off of that, our DRAs take about a week and a half to complete. Assessments, again, they're given just that one block. But I know as far as like even planning for guided reading, this year I feel much better going into it since it's my second year. But my first year, last year, I can't even tell you how many hours on the weekends, prepping binders and just making sure that I had, enough note cards to write new words to put on a little board. So I think the statement is very true that you never stop, because I even sit on Instagram and I'll find, some really cool things that other teachers have used. And, it's Friday at 7:00. I should be doing something other than that with my life. But I see it, I'm like, oh, I got to do it. That's so cool. So I just, I think that you never stop. Yeah, it's very, very true statement. So.
Agreed. As far as like the beginning of the year assessments and everything, I'll tell you that I started, I think, the first week of school and spent reading and intervention times trying to get those knocked out. And that was fluency, sight words, and phonics screeners. And those took the first 4 weeks of school. So it takes a while to do that kind of stuff. And we didn't even do DRAs. I'd say on average for a DRA, you spend about 15 minutes with a kid. I mean, it could be less, it could be more, because if you do a DRA with a student and they're struggling with it, you're going to have to go down another level and do another one with them. Or if it's too easy for them, you need to retest and do the next level up. So, I mean, it's not even necessarily just one per student in that aspect. Planning as a team, we meet once a week as well, but then of course lunchtime is consumed with planning, and before school the team text and everything. So I mean, I'd say on average it's probably a few hours a week at least, dedicated strictly to reading, especially when you're considering planning your small groups on top of a whole group lesson, because each small group you're targeting a different area of need for each group. So essentially that's, if you have 4 groups, 4 more individual lessons.
And just to go back to like team planning, and I'm sure other like schools do this, but here at Walker, we usually set aside like Mondays we meet for math and science, Tuesdays we meet for ELA. So that way, I mean, in reality, you're all the time you're meeting, but we try to like focus on those days, and then, when we have other days for other things, but that seems to help. It kind of like gives us a little bit of structure too when we do plan.
One more thing just to add to that. So last year, with my team, we did that with planning. We're planning this day, this day, this day. This year, of course, everything is different. We actually meet with administrations Monday and Tuesday, and then Thursday we do all of our data. So this year it is a little bit more challenging to plan like that. I know I'm on a very strong team this year, so it's great. I actually have been planning all of social studies for the entire year this past month. Just because the frameworks in Seminole County, they're great. But if you want them to have the true social studies experience, you got to add a little bit to it. So just know that going in, that like sometimes you can have that, but it just depends on the year, where you're going to have to maybe plan a little bit differently. So.
Also, one more thing. I think it's really good when you and your team almost like everyone has a job. So like you said, you plan social studies. So we have the same thing. Like I do math, my partner she does science, and we keep each other in the loop of everything. Obviously I'm not like, okay, you do everything, I'll just look at it. But as far as like gathering the materials, getting everything ready, and then you kind of like share it. So everyone takes on a job. That way we're all working, and we're all planning, and we're all aware of what we need and what we're doing. So that has helped a lot too.
Thank you very much for your honesty. I appreciate it. Yes, some of that was very helpful. Thank you. So our next question is, what type of home reading or family involvement program is used in your classroom or school?
I hope this answers. So like we have AR, accelerated reader, that where students read a book on their level and they take a quiz on it. They can now do that at home this year, which is awesome, from their portal, their Clever portal also. And just like some other things that we do to get families involved is like on their homework sheet, they read 20 minutes a night, they fill out their favorite book they read that week. Also this year, I don't know how we're going to do this, but usually we have like science night, math night, reading night, things like that, where parents can come. There's different activities set up, different information. I mean, I hope we get to do something like that this year, but that's what we've done in the past so that parents feel more involved with it.
I know that with reading for whole school, we do AR as well. We actually just got that up and running this past week, so I'm sure within the next couple weeks we'll get that really going. I know as a grade level, we have reading logs in first grade, so they can write with their parents what book they read. I know something that I do because at a Title I school, parent involvement is very hit or miss. It makes you just love the kids a little bit more. But if they bring that sheet back to me and it's filled out, I keep it personally, just so at the end of the year, I can track really how much they're reading with their parents at home. But also it's a good way for me to know what they're being exposed to. Are they reading the same book? Are they reading different books? One way I've made that a little bit easier for the parents is giving them the class code for Epic Books. It has a ton of different books, different levels. It's even got, ones where they can read to them or, they read it to their parents. So it makes it a little bit nicer on the parents, definitely more cost effective. So the parents aren't always out buying books too. But when they bring those sheets back to me, I also give them like a little treat. So just to really show them like how awesome they are. Cause in Title I, it's hard some days.
All homework is optional at my school. So as I'm sure it might be in other schools. So it's kind of, we don't mandate anything as far as AR. I know first grade uses it, but second grade does not. And I'm not sure about the upper grade levels. I know when I was in third, they didn't have a family program or anything like that, but we do encourage Epic and ReadWorks to practice at home as well, with accounts set up for the kids for both of those. And typically to encourage that at home, I have like a homework folder and they record what homework they do for the week, turn it in on Fridays, and they get raffle tickets for each type of task that they complete throughout the week. And there's a raffle at the end of the week. So trying to just encourage reading at home.
Those are some great ways to incorporate reading without requiring it. So those are some really good tidbits. Thank you. Those are always like those little nuggets that we write down that we get from you guys. So we appreciate them. Our 11th question is, what does MTSS, the multi-tiered system of supports / RTI, response to intervention, look like in your school district?
As I'm sure it's pretty similar, MTSS is the multi-tiered support system. And here we have for reading and math, all students, you start off at tier 1, and then we have tier 2 and tier 3 for math and reading. Tier 2, the support is given in the classroom in small groups with the teacher. Tier 3, our instructional coaches pull kids out in small groups for intervention. And for tier 2, the teacher tracks the data and we track it every other week and we put it in, and then we have monthly or so meetings with our coaches to discuss that data to make sure if we want to keep that student on track or keep a student on tier, take them off, where are we going from there. So.
At our school, our teachers are responsible for teaching both tier 2 and tier 3 in the classroom. So if they're tier 2, you have to meet with them 2 times a week, and if they're tier 3, 3 times a week in small group. And like Gina said, just meeting with the coaches and stuff, figuring out whether or not they need to go up. And it's kind of like a pathway to figuring out, like, if they are not succeeding on tier 2, okay, they move them to tier 3. Okay, now we need to meet with them 3 times a week. You're tracking their data in a website that we have through the county. And then if it's still not working after a period of time and you're seeing the data not improving at all, then you look into what's the issue. And sometimes it might be a student with a learning disability. If the parent agrees and everything, you go into testing with a counselor and things like that.
Yeah, at my school too, it is up to the teachers to get all of the little points for tier 2 and tier 3. Last year, my team, we did a walked intervention at the end of the day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, which was helpful because we were able to, I take tier 3, tier 2, like we could kind of disperse them a little bit more. So that was nicer. But at the end of the week, we would still have those bullet points. We go about every 6 weeks, and then we will reevaluate with the coaches as well. Something different at my school too, we do reading, we do math, but we also have behavior that they are tiered with as well. So sometimes that I didn't know that was a thing until I, started working here. So the behavioral interventionalist will come in then too, and it's basically the same, but that's another area that they look at as well.
Like, hats off to you guys for doing tier 2 and tier 3, because that's crazy. I forgot what oh yeah, so we also have something like similar. It's called Walk to Success, and it's at the end of the day. We haven't started yet. We're trying to get the schedules, but that's where you kind of like, I guess you could say, like, dig deeper and look at those skills even more and really like focus in on what they're filling in the gaps, like filling in the gaps of like phonics or anything that's on grade level, or maybe you have higher grade levels that you're enriching during that time. So that's a good chunk of time that we have at the end of the day.
We used to also do walk to interventions where each teacher on the team would have their area of focus. Obviously, this year it's the students have to stay with their homeroom teacher, so you just meet with the different kids. But there might be certain teachers working on SIPs or phonics, and then other teachers who are working on vocabulary, some low comprehension, mid comprehension, high comprehension. So each teacher kind of had their area of focus, and then the students would split among the teachers.
It's always very interesting to hear the differences in schools and your different experiences, so thank you for that. Our 12th question today is, who are the staff members available to assist teachers and students in the area of reading, and what are their positions and roles? So I know you guys have talked about it a little bit, so it is a little redundant, so I apologize for the questions, but if you could just hit those really quick, that would be great.
I know at my school, the speech pathologist comes in 3 times a week. We'll pull different kids. So she actually helps a lot because even if we went over a lesson that day, she'll take a small group of them and kind of reiterate that lesson a little bit, have them use the language a little bit more. So it is super helpful. Just in case if they didn't get it, they get that little extra of exposure. I also have this year. I have 2 ESE teachers that come in and will pull 2 of my students separately so that they get that one-on-one instruction as well. Again, most of the time it is still doing what we're doing as a class, but it's just that one-on-one with them. I know at my school, the reading coach and math coach really don't pull out kids a lot, but last year they had extra time, so they were able to help us with that. With pulling them out, for extra exposure in reading or math or just whatever they needed.
We have 1 reading coach for the entire school, and she does not pull any students or anything. She helps us basically with finding resources and planning and things. And when it comes time for testing, whether it's beginning, middle of the year, or end of the year testing, she helps with that if certain teachers need it. And then like state testing, she helps with that. Or when retentions with third grade, she'll do portfolio testing if they were to fail the FSA, or they think they're projected to fail the FSA, the reading FSA. She'll do that as well. And then we've got 2 ESE teachers that pull students with learning disabilities, and that's the support.
It is like super interesting to hear the differences in schools with even support. This like goes across the board because I don't know what school you'll end up working at, but like the instructional coach here, it's just funny because I've been calling her like every morning. Like right now, it's like a morning, like I always have a question for her, and she is literally, she does math, they do math and reading. So there's 2 of them, and she's awesome. But just other people that might be in your schools or might not, but like they've said, ESE teachers, speech teachers, ESOL, honestly, also your team members. I feel like everything gets so crazy that you forget, like, oh, well, maybe I can just go talk to the person. You know, it's hard, especially right now, but I'll tell you, like, the number one person or people are going to be your team members. Don't ever think that there's like a dumb question either, because I'm still asking questions and it's my 4th year. And so they're awesome. Also, you know, your administration, I know that they're not the first go-to person about that stuff, but if you feel comfortable enough, sometimes if it's a higher question that no one else feels comfortable answering, like your administration also is a good group of people. And yeah.
Absolutely agree with Gina. Your team members are going to be probably your biggest support, and it's just great to use them to bounce ideas off of each other every morning, plan and everything. Like, just ask questions. What are you doing today? How are you teaching it? I ask that all the time. How are you going to prepare that lesson, or how are you going to deliver it? Well, what about these kids? How do you think they'll understand it like that? Use your teammates for sure.
Yeah, especially last year, since it was my first year and I was, at a Title I school, we have a lot of people that help with a lot of things. I actually had to make a list and write, because there were so many. We have social workers, we have the behaviorists or specialists, we have speech, ESE, like it was too overwhelming for me. And oftentimes I did find myself just going back to my team. It wasn't as strong as it is this year, but it was still great to hear, even if your team members don't know the answer, they can help guide you to make more sense of it. So just know that you're never alone. Last year I was definitely on my island by myself, but it was really nice that I could go to other staff members and still get navigated to the right way. So.
And I'm assuming it's like this, but usually there's like a team leader, 1 or 2 maybe. And it's always nice. I mean, their job is to like help you and build you up, and they're a team leader for a reason. So, like my first year too, like our team leader, I went to her for everything. And even if she didn't know, she would go to another person to find out for us. And so, like she said, like, you're never alone. There's a tribe.
That's very good to know. I know a lot of us, especially with all of this going on, feel like we're a little unprepared going into this journey. So it's good to know the levels of support that we have. So thank you for that. So we have 1 question left for today, and then I will open up the floor to just regular questions if anybody has them. But what kind of reading professional development is available for you guys in your school or in your district? And how do you find out about these opportunities?
I know at my school there is a PD calendar sent out, typically by administration, and those PDs are offered through the county. It's all done through like our Clever. It's on a website called Frontline, where we can sign up for those and then write what we found at the end, if we liked it, if we felt like it was helpful, if it wasn't. So I know at my school that's how we navigate PDs.
Oh, same, pretty much. Also, right now, I feel like things are very different with PDs. So, once again, like our coaches, a lot of the times will send us tremendous amount of like opportunities that are available right now for PDs that maybe we don't even know about. But also, we have like a school calendar with them. Also, like I know when we graduated, and I'm sure right now it was required to be ESOL and reading endorsed, but I have, teachers that have been teaching for a really long time that it wasn't required, so now they're having to go back and they get information about how to become endorsed now because it's a lot different. And also there's UF coaching, which is pretty cool, where you can go through the process to become an instructional coach. So that's also out there, I know. And we get a lot of that info from our coaches. So
Yeah, the same for us. The county PDs we have typically once or twice a month after school on Wednesdays, and it might focus on reading sometimes. Sometimes it's on other things. Like for instance, we have an iReady PD tomorrow after school. And then like over the summer, there's lots of PDs offered usually on certain campuses throughout the county. This year they did it all virtually. And then throughout the year on Frontline, like Evie said.
Also, just throwing this out here too, going back on the ESOL and reading certification, I know it was required when I graduated as well, but I actually took a different path, and because I didn't finish all my tests in time. So I was actually able to get both reading and ESOL endorsed through the county, much like the older teachers are doing right now. So it is super easy. But with that, I actually found that you can get endorsed for like gifted, and there's a ton of other things too. So if there's something that interests you, just know that through the county, there's also like many different ways you can, gain those extra certifications with like little to no cost to you. I finished both of mine with literally no debt. The county paid for everything. So it was great.
Yeah, thank you, Evie, for talking about that, because I know a lot of us are either on a what's called a lifelong learning track or a certification track, and a lot of us are at an impasse at the moment because of the testing and getting in to get those tests done so that we can graduate, or switching. So it's good to know that we have a fallback if there's some sort of issue with the testing.
Yeah, that was the problem I had my senior year. So I ended up by doing lifelong learning. I ended up by actually doing my internship at the Science Center, so in Orlando. So very different than Seminole County Public Schools. But yeah, just know that. And even if you do take lifelong learning, you have 3 years to complete your tests with teaching. So I think I have like one more test left, but I still have 2 years. So know that everything will work out, because I cried for about 1.5 years because I didn't know what I was going to do. So just know that it's all going to be okay. And you guys are going to be covered no matter what.
So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions, anything you want to ask a current teacher who is currently experiencing all the fun that they get to go through right now, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask, or you can go in the chat box and I can voice your question for you. And I'll give you guys a couple minutes to get those questions in. Okay, so Don would like to know, can you clarify about the required reading assessments? Like which assessments are required? In contrast with that, which assessments are more like informal but still useful to you?
well, really, if you technically they're all required because when we test, it's going in as a grade. But I guess like in the beginning of the year, like Jenna said, you're doing like things like fluencies, where you're seeing how many words correct they're reading, and you're putting that into your data for your school, like school wide. So like fluencies, maybe their phonics, things like that. But then you get into your iReady, which is definitely required. And that gives you a big snapshot of the student's skills. So that's on the computer, iReady. And then ones in class that we use are things like their quarterly assessments, which goes into the grade book. a cold read, or any type of like quizzes that you're giving, I guess. But technically, I mean, in my opinion, they're all required because they're all either for a grade or they're being assessed on something. So I hope that kind of clarifies.
I would agree with that, because if it's not required by the county, like the quarterly comprehension assessments Gina was talking about, it's required by your school typically, or it's just necessary to have that information in order for you to know what areas of need they have, or what groups that they should be placed in. So, but I'd say as far as like actual grading, definitely the comprehension tests, which we call cold reads, and there are certain ones provided by the county as well, which are like the quarterly, and usually they have a informational text quarterly assessment and a literature quarterly assessment.
Also, just so if you're wondering, like, how do you know when you plan with your team, you'll know like, okay, so we have this quarterly assessment coming up on this informational text. So it's definitely like a team planning thing again. So you'll, find out where to access the test and how, and what day you're giving it to the kids. So that'll all be, planned.
Dawn, I hope that answered your question, and if not, you can have a follow-up question, or if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Now's your chance. While we wait for some more questions to roll in, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple housekeeping things. Right now in the chat, I am sending the link to fill out the form so that you guys can get your certificates of attendance. Please be wary that the email that you provide us with will be the email that the certificate is sent to. So please make sure you have access to the email that you give us. Also, this Night Ed Talk is recorded and will be published to YouTube within the week. So keep an eye out for that, and I'll send the link to that YouTube now. And the final link that I am sending in the chat is the wonderful Night Ed Talks that we have coming up. We have a bunch planned this semester, so please feel free to check them out as we continue on through. Dawn, with another question. Are you able to make different types of accommodations on those assessments, like phonics mastery for ELLs?
I know at my school, when it comes to ELLs, that's all the ESOL teacher. When it comes to like the assessments, the phonics, all that, I actually send that with the child and her. To my knowledge, they have their own assessments as well. So personally, I think it depends on your school and what kind of support you guys have.
Yeah, and I think as far as accommodations, if the student is receiving accommodations, you'll be very well aware of them, whether it's like an ESE teacher or an ESOL teacher, you'll know and you'll have access to all of their accommodations. So if they get read to, you're allowed to read certain assessments to them. But yeah, you'll have access to that from whatever teacher is providing that.
As far as like with the phonics mastery test that we give, or the phonics screener, the first thing that you're looking for is that they know their letter names and sounds. And so that's just an important skill that's kind of hard to give an accommodation for. And then you go from there, and like they said, the ESOL teacher would kind of step in, because then you get into different patterns of letters and stuff. And that's something she would typically help with, or he.
And I'm going to give a last call for questions before we wrap up today. I don't want to cut anybody off. Just a reminder, please make sure that you fill out the link for the certificate so that you can get credit for being here today. If there's no final questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much, ladies, for lending us the last hour. We really appreciate it, and having all your insight on all of these questions. Thank you for your tips and your tricks and everything in between. Is there anything you'd like to say before we send off?
Yeah. So many things. No, I'm just kidding. Good luck. Our job is, I wish I could say it was always easy. And I remember in college, and I'm sure Jenna, like we were together, and you can't be prepared for everything. You can try, but when it comes down to it, when you're in your own classroom, you'll know what to do. It'll come naturally, and you might not have been prepared for whatever comes at you. But like we said before, you have people surrounding you that are on the same boat. Also, like a really good article to read your first year is the Marigold article by like I forget the name of it. It's Marigold article. If you type that in, it's honestly, I would read it throughout my first year all the time, and it got me through a lot. And just have people around you, positive people. It can be really easy to be negative in this profession, but just try your best, especially during these hard times. So good luck to all of you. I wish you the best.
Yes, good luck. It is definitely full of challenges, and there will be lots of hard days, but it's a very rewarding career, and it's really kind of are truly shaping the future through kids and everything. And reading is just so important. It affects everything that they do, every subject. If they struggle with reading, they're going to struggle throughout. So it's a really important skill to help them with. Just like Gina said, find those that are there to support you and be positive. Even just keeping a little journal where you write down positive things that happen to you and going back and looking at it on those hard days can help.
Yep. I just want to say good luck to everybody too. Know that at the end of the day, what you do for your class is going to be the best. I know that last year with support, it was super hard for me, but I actually found a lot of support within like the specials teachers, teachers that weren't even in my grade level. So just know that this is also a great networking opportunity as well. You never know who you're going to meet. My best friend is the art teacher. So she was the reason why I made it through last year. But another thing, always put yourself in the kids' shoes. If you're having a hard time with it, kind of shift your perspective a little bit. I know that like personally, I couldn't read until 3rd grade. So now that I teach 1st grade, I'm like, okay, what would I have wanted? What would I have wanted from my teacher to help me understand this? So at the end of the day, just put yourself in those kids' shoes, because it will open your eyes to things that they come so easy to us that it may be super hard for them. So, but you guys are gonna do awesome, and just love every second of it, even the harder ones, because it makes it way more enjoyable, especially when the light bulbs go off in their heads and you see how awesome they're doing. So
I think someone found the article in the chat box, which is really cool. So if anyone wants to save that, it's really good. Also, I could go on and on, but also remember to put yourself don't overwork yourself. Don't stay till 7 o'clock at night. Don't maintain a healthy work environment and home environment. Always remember to take care of yourself.
also know that the kids will survive with you one day if you have to take it off. I told myself last year, nope, they're not. And then at the end of the year, I'm like, I'm exhausted. So that's another big thing. Yeah, totally take time for yourself. Treat yourself, get that monthly massage, whatever it is, but keep a really awesome routine with that, because yes, we get 2 months off, but let me tell you, The months in between, they're a little difficult sometimes. So always put you first. It's really important.
Well, with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you, ladies. Those were some powerful words to leave off on, so we'll leave it there. And thank you very much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it, and best of luck on the rest of your school year.